Good morning, everyone. Welcome from the League of Women Voters of Door County to today's forum. I'm Shirley Senarighi, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Door County. The League received multiple requests to conduct this forum here today, and we see that as an indication that the people of Liberty Grove value the information gained from our forums. So we're happy to be here. I'm real happy we didn't have to reschedule because of snow as well. Now, please know that the League of Women Voters of Door County is the sole sponsor of today's forum. While we appreciate that the Northern Door Neighbors Association helped arrange refreshments and distributed posters regarding the event, the Northern Door Neighbors Association is not a co-sponsor of a League forum. We thank them for providing refreshments, along with Door County North and some other individuals. Events such as this candidate forum are supported by donations to the League's general fund from businesses, groups, and individuals, and we're really thankful for that so that we can sponsor forums. The League of Women Voters Door County is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. We have been asked, why is it that the League doesn't co-sponsor with local organizations? And the reason is because the League has a very strong nonpartisan policy. The League neither supports nor opposes candidates for office at any level of government, local, state, or national. Local organizations may choose to endorse a specific candidate. Therefore, the League never, because we never endorse or oppose a candidate, we do not co-sponsor candidate forums with local organizations here in Liberty Grove or in other parts of the county or state. It's important to us that League of Women Voters forums are run in a consistent manner, whether held here for the town of Liberty Grove or the village of Forestville or the school board of Southern Door or the Sevastopol Town Board. It doesn't matter. We want our forums to be conducted in a fair and consistent manner. So let me reiterate, the League of Women Voters of Door County is the sole sponsor of today's forum. Voter service is the League's #1 priority. The League focuses on involving citizens in government, encouraging well-qualified people to run for office, and help voters become better informed so that they can vote at the polls. That's what today's forum is about. In our effort to inform voters, today's program is also being recorded by Laddie Chapman. The League of Women Voters Door County owns the copyright to the audiovisual recording created by its contracted recorder. You will find a link to the recording on the League of Women Voters website and on our Facebook page, or you can go to https://www.youtube.com/user/Sherman Bay. I know that's long, and Laddie has provided small cards with that address on it, and they are on the League table. Barb, could you or someone else hold up one of Laddie's cards at the front of the table so they can see? I had one in my hand and I let it sit. Yes. Please pick up that card. It will have the YouTube address. The programs will be aired beginning for sure by Sunday evening. A reminder that no flash cameras, no motor-driven cameras, or other visual or sound recording devices are allowed to be used during this forum. You will have access to the forum, as I mentioned before, on YouTube or the Access channel. Today's forum is for the 3 candidates vying for 2 positions on the Liberty Grove Town Board, being held as part of the general election, April 1st. Lou Covotsos, and I practiced. Covotsos.
I'm still practicing.
All right. Well, Senarighi took me a while, too. Gary Farber and Hugh Mulliken. The forum consists of written questions and candidates' responses. The questions are submitted by those in attendance here. Thank you for writing questions. And those submitted by people who cannot attend but plan to watch the recording who submitted questions. I'll tell you, we have a lot of questions on the table. League members have distributed cards on which we ask that you carefully write your questions. If you need another card or you have a completed question, just raise your hand and we have runners who will gather cards and bring you more. Please ask questions about the things that concern you, your family, or the Liberty Grove town government. Questions should address all candidates. A question that might be posed to one candidate will not be asked. We ask that no personal or inappropriate questions be asked. If there is more than one question that addresses the same issue, we will read one, setting the others aside to be answered if there is time. The screeners will do their best to pass to the moderator questions on a variety of topics and issues. Through this process, we hope you will gain information about all three candidates that will help inform which two you might vote for on April 1st in the general election. If your question is not asked, again, after the forum during coffee and cookies is a good time for you to individually ask your question of a candidate. If at this point you still have a cell phone that you haven't turned off, I would remind you to please silence that if you can. We want to acknowledge and thank our candidates. Thank you, all three of you, for running for this important office in your community, and thank you for being here participating in our forum today. We thank the town of Liberty Grove for making these facilities available to us. You have a wonderful town hall. We thank the local media for publicizing the event, and we thank the Northern Door groups offering to provide refreshments today and offering more time again for interaction after the forum. The Door County North Group and Northern Door Neighborhood Association. I might also mention that maps of the wards for Liberty Grove are now available on the town website, and there is a hard paper copy on the table in the back if you need to double check what ward you vote in your town. We're ready to begin the forum at this point. We will continue asking questions until approximately 11:30, or we run out of questions. I don't believe that will happen. And then after 11:30, there will be an opportunity for each of the candidates to make closing statements during which they have the right to go back and say something further about any question or any issue on their mind. At this point, then, I would like to introduce you to the moderator for today, League of Women Voter member Jennifer Miller, who will introduce the candidates and continue with the forum. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, this is a forum, not a debate. All of the candidates will have equal time to present their positions. We have distributed league guidelines. All of the candidates have agreed in advance to the following guidelines. As Shirley mentioned, the league is a nonpartisan organization, and the forum is designed to focus on the issues, not individual personalities. The views expressed by the candidates are those of the candidates, not of the League of Women Voters of Door County, and our sponsorship of this forum, again, is not an endorsement of any candidate. So each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement. At the end of all of the questions, each will have a 5-minute opportunity. Which one?
That one. Yeah.
Well, then we'll move it forward.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to
All right.
ask.
Thank you for letting us know that. Okay. So I was mentioning the 2-minute opening statement, then there will be questions until 11:30, and a 5-minute opportunity for each candidate to make a closing remark. For each question, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer, up to 2 minutes. Each question will be posed to all candidates. However, a candidate may decline to answer any question, and no question will be directed at just one person. The candidates have drawn straws to determine who will speak first, but the order of speaking will be alternated so that each candidate has an opportunity to be the first to respond. Again, only written questions will be accepted, and the question screeners have been going through the questions to eliminate redundancies and inappropriate questions. An example was questions directed at just one person. The questions are to address the issues appropriate to this particular public office. If the screeners do not understand a question, it will not be asked, and questions will be asked as they are written. The timekeepers are in the front, and they will signal when there are 30 seconds remaining in a response time. And they will also let the candidates know when it's time to stop, so be prepared to stop when you get that signal. No flash cameras, motor-driven cameras, or other visual or sound recording devices are allowed to be used during this forum other than by any press or media that may be present and the forum sponsor. Candidates are not allowed to use any audio or video from the forum in or for commercial advertising. The League of Women Voters of Door County owns the copyright to any audio-visual recording created by its contracted recorder. Campaign materials, including biographical information, may be distributed after the forum in the back of the room if candidates choose to do that, and any campaign literature that would be distributed would have the legal disclaimer authorized and paid for by. Candidates are invited to remain after the forum to give the public an opportunity to meet and visit with you personally. As we said, we're going to ask questions until 11:30. And then there'll be the closing remarks. So we'll start with each candidate's 2-minute introduction, and based on the straws drawn in advance, we begin with Mr. Covotsos.
Thank you. Yeah, I drew the short straw. Well, thank you. I want to extend my appreciation to all those who've come, obviously, and especially to the League of Women Voters. I sat where you are last year when Nancy, Frank, and Michael had the opportunity to speak up. And am I not speaking into it enough? When Nancy, Frank, and Michael participated in the forum, and one of the candidates, I think it was Frank, said that this represents the epitome of the democratic process. And I have to agree with that. I think it's just a blessing that we have to be able to be here and doing and listening to the issues this way. And the fact that there are candidates running rather than just the incumbents, I think is a good thing, because it makes us all better to hear and to be challenged that way as well. In the past year, and I've been on the board as the result of an appointment for the past year, I have come to respect my fellow board members as well as the town staff in immeasurable ways. I had never understood quite the difficulty there is to being not only on the board, but trying to run the town. I had sat in the town board after town board for a number of years, and I had gained more and more respect, but I really came to know the substance of the issues over the past year as a member of the town board. And that has been a challenge, but one that obviously I have decided to renew by throwing my hat in the ring for the first time that way as well. So I appreciate again your being here, and turn it over to Gary.
Okay. My name is Gary Farber, and because for some reason I was not in the pulse yesterday with the other two candidates, you now can see what I look like. So, although I know a lot of you in the room already. I too appreciate the fact that there are so many of you here and that the League of Women Voters is doing this. One of the goals I'd set for myself when I was appointed to this position last year was to try and get more and more people to the meetings. And the last 2 meetings have been really very, very encouraging. So keep on coming. Thank you. I've been here in Door County since 1994, and I retired up here permanently in the year 2000. We live on Lakeview Road. I come from Waukesha, Wisconsin, and I was born and raised there. There will be information in the Advocate. I know they got my picture and my bio, okay? So when that's coming out next week, I'm not quite sure. So, but if you do have any questions, you know, about why I came here and what I do here, feel free to ask. I have been associated with the Liberty Grove Historical Society since 1999, both in the position of secretary and secretary-treasurer. Since last April when I was appointed to the board, again, it's been a real steep learning curve, and I feel I can offer much more to the board if I'm elected to the position. So, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you.
Hugh?
Mr. Mulliken.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Hugh Mulliken, and again, thanks everyone for showing up here. I've been a resident, a taxpayer, year-round person, and a voter in the town of Liberty Grove since 1971. And I've lived in my current house, which is 9855 North Bay Road, for over 30 years. And I'd like to make a small correction. The Advocate has me listed as an Ephraim address. I do have a business, and I do have an inn in Ephraim, but I have resided in North Bay for over 30 years. In my home, I have raised 2 kids, and they went through kindergarten and grade school and finally graduated from Gibraltar and went on to higher education. And like many children, they moved away from Door County. And I guess I really can't blame them for that. But I'm here somewhat because of my kids, because they have expressed an interest in returning to Door County, returning to Liberty Grove. And I want to make sure that Liberty Grove remains a great place to live and is affordable to live there. My main focus for coming back on the town board is for the fiscal responsibility I think the town board has not put through. I think that to kind of put it in perspective, the town of Liberty Grove has a budget of $2.3 million. And of that budget, $600,000 plus is spent to service the debt it currently carries. That's over 25% of the annual budget is expended in debt service. And so I'd like to get on the town board, and I'd like to be able to at least direct some of the savings that I think are possible to save the taxpayers money. Thanks.
Thank you. The first question will be answered first by Mr. Farber. What do you believe are the most important characteristics of a board member?
Oh, most important characteristics. I guess for myself, I want to be able to listen to what people have to say, what their opinions are on things, without being judgmental about what they say, and trying to take into account both sides of every issue, and then vote intelligently on it. Now, going along with that, I think I have to do my homework with regard to an issue and not rely on other sources to do all my work for me. If I have a question about what somebody says, then I've got to go to the office here and get an answer. I have to get something in writing, do some research in terms of past history. So it means that I've got to stay on top of things, not only just for the issues that are on the agenda, but the overall operations of the town board and the town of Liberty Grove. So the other thing, I guess, would be that I have to be available to people, and that to me is something I'm going to work a lot harder on if I'm elected to the position. Our phone number is in the book. You can contact me here at the town hall. Just don't call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't appreciate that. So, But stop over and say hello if you have questions, or ask me to come over to your place if you want me to, answer a particular question. I'd be more, or if you have a meeting with some other people, a coffee meeting or something, or if you want to just spend time at the brew.
Thank you. Mr. Mulliken.
Thank you. What's the most important characteristics of a good board member? I think one thing, and I forget which one of you gentlemen alluded to it, it takes a while to learn how to be town government. There's a lot of little roads, ins and outs, and characteristics and stuff you have to learn. And I think I can bring to the table a good amount of experience. I've been on the town board for 2 terms. I've served 4 terms on the town board. I've also served, or I'm completing my 6th term on the county board, so I have a lot of experience in local government. And so one of the things I think you need to do as part of this is not only know what's happening, but I think you need to be an open person and listen to both sides of any kind of problem that may be put before you. I often don't agree with, like Mr. Miller, my fellow county board member, on different issues. I mean, not always, but at least we can have dialogue, and I think that's important. You need to be attentive, you need to be fair, and I think those are the most important characteristics. Just be attentive and fair and know the ropes, because that's what it takes to get through a problem. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Covotsos.
I've grappled with this issue as well. I've thought long and hard about it, and I don't think there's any distinction between somebody on the town board, in the state legislature, in the U.S. Congress, or in any level of government, that is. And I think that characteristic of a board member, a state senator, U.S. congressperson, whatever that might be, is knowing the difference between being a statesperson and a politician. And I'm not using politician in a pejorative sense. I'm using politician in the sense of somebody who really acts in order to garner votes and do what he or she thinks is politically expedient, on the one hand, as opposed to someone who would rather do what he or she thinks is right for the town or the governing entity, regardless of the political fallout that as a result of that. In terms of other characteristics, I think responsiveness, Gary and you have already alluded to it. Responsiveness, I don't think there's anything more frustrating than not getting an answer. I know I've made it my business to respond to every inquiry, whether it's an email or occasionally a phone call or just now an encounter at the pig every once in a while, to be able to respond, which is part of the listening part. There is a way of understanding how people feel that way, and that's golden in terms of being able to understand that. I know, for example, when I had somewhat turned on the tree preservation on Garrett Bay Road because I thought the tactics that were being used were detrimental to the town. Those tactics have proven to be detrimental to the town. And I didn't have to say anything along those lines. I could have kept silent. And I know that I alienated a lot of people who would have been voters otherwise.
Technical, cosmetic.
Sure.
Tell me.
The other way.
And in the meantime, I will let the candidates know. I forgot to mention before, as we go along, we might have some longer questions. If you need to have it repeated, let me know. We're good? Okay. Question number 2, Mr. Mulliken will start. As an elected representative, will your decisions be based on the wishes of the majority of citizens or on your own opinions if they differ from those of your constituency?
That's a great question. It's difficult sometimes to understand an entire problem, and sometimes people vote, I think, as Lou suggested here, with their really their opinions are influenced more from their heart than are from the facts that you have to really sort of address problems sometimes. I think an example might be that right now, or the last time, the levy override was not passed. And if the town board is financing its ongoing activities with debt, debt is the last thing you want to do to finance the activities. You not only are you paying the tax dollars to support the debt, but also you're paying for the interest on the debt. So sometimes it's better to vote what you know is the correct thing, and it doesn't always follow what everyone's best thinking or wishes are. It does sometimes just doesn't make sense. So I guess to answer your question, it's difficult to answer the question directly, but there will be occasions when I think you need to vote as you feel, not as public opinion would have it.
Thank you.
That is a really good question, something I've grappled with, again, in terms of how does one determine what the majority is, and is the majority always correct? The first question, I think, precedes the second one. We don't take a referendum on everything we do. We have to, as representatives, use the knowledge that we have gained, putting it in perspective to see how things pan out. And something on the surface might seem eminently understandable and preferable because a lot of people are very vocal and supportive of it. But sometimes in the bigger picture, the benefit to the town or the governing entity has a place that the majority even might not understand at that time. And it's a very difficult thing to feel like you're going against what you think is the majority when in fact you know better. You know better because you've had more opportunity to study. It's not because you know better than the ordinary citizen. You have an opportunity to have seen more of the facts. You refer to the facts. You see more of the facts. You understand what the implications are, short-term and long-term. The roads have been such a controversial issue. And you might have voted in a certain way because to keep the tree line narrower. Yet at the same time, when you look down the road, no pun intended, and you see the fact that from a budgetary point of view, we are really strapped as a town, and that every penny that's put into a road needs to be in such a way that that road is going to last because we just don't have that much more money to invest over and over again, then you have a conflict.
Mr. Farber.
Since April, one of the things that has really concerned me and something that I will continue to work on is that I represent the town of Liberty Grove. I don't represent the 8 people that sit here on a Wednesday night and tell us what they want, unless those 8 people represent all of Liberty Grove. Liberty Grove is not Ellison Bay, it's not Appleport, it's not Northport, it's Liberty Grove. It starts at the Grove Road on the south end of town and goes all the way up to Northport. And I guess when I vote on a particular issue, I vote with the town of Liberty Grove in mind. And the fact that that $2 million budget that we're dealing with is for 1,170 some voters in the town of Liberty Grove, not just one road or not just one section of Liberty Grove. And to me, that is the thing that I want to take and concentrate the most on. People need information, and I want to know how the people on Grove Road think about something before I vote. How I'm going to get that, I'm still wrestling with that. I have no idea. And, other than calling everybody on the voter list and asking their opinion on a particular agenda item, I guess that would be something to do, but I don't have that kind of time. So I guess go to the website, look at the agenda. If you have a concern, call me, and I'll bring that concern up at the board meeting. So, thank you.
The next question will start with Mr. Covotsos. How do you view the role and input of property owners versus full-time residents?
I shouldn't think that there should be one iota of a difference between the interests of a property owner and full-time residents. Not only property owners and full-time residents, people who come through here, even on their way to Washington Island, should have as much of the benefit and protection of this town, whether you've been here for generations or whether you're here for 30 seconds or 30 minutes, I guess, would be more realistic. You know, at one time you hear lots of distinction between, oh, I'm a voter and I'm not a voter, and therefore giving that person, it seems, more credibility, if you will. Children don't vote, and yet we protect the interests of children. The citizens, the senior citizens in Scand who might not get out to the polls, who might not even be conscious of where they are in that point in their lives, we owe them as much of a responsibility, whether it's fire protection or any other services that towns provide. So making any distinction in my mind between a property owner and full-time residents leads us down the wrong path. I think we need to dispel any of the ideas that if you're a voter or a long-term property owner, you have some more status and influence than if you are, like I say, here literally 30 minutes as a visitor.
Mr. Farber.
I guess I would echo what Lou says. I would hope that when I make a decision, I'm not distinguishing between those that own property and those that are locals, as we call them. So it's difficult to do sometimes, but again, as I've mentioned before, my concern is the town of Liberty Grove. And if you own property in the town of Liberty Grove, you pay taxes in the town of Liberty Grove. And those taxes are what I'm looking at when I look at your budget. And I've got to find some way that budget is equalized over both the long-term residents and the property owners that are not here all the time. And I think also I have to take, like Lou said, you know, the number of people that travel through Liberty Grove every year want to ride on safe roads. They, you know, want everything to look nice. They want to leave here wanting to come back, and we want them to come back. And so I would hope that I would not distinguish between any particular group anytime that I vote on a particular issue at a town board meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Muller.
Thanks. What's the question was, what's the role and input or how do you feel about property owners versus full-time residents? I don't really have, I appreciate the people who own property in Liberty Grove, and I think that they should have input to what's happening. However, the people who vote here are the people who really sort of make the decisions for the town. I mean, they elect the town board people, they elect the town chair, and they set the policies for what's happening. And so I often encourage people who have homes up here but may live in, say, as an example, Milwaukee or Covotsos or Green Bay, that they can vote up here if they want to, just they have to give up voting in their current hometown. And so it's important that everyone gets sort of equal representation, but the fact of the matter is the people vote here are also property owners usually, and they should have some sort of, I think, a leg up on just the person who's passing through, as you say, for a ferry ride to Washington Island. Thanks.
Question number 4 from the public. Mr. Farber will start. Water is the most important issue facing all of us in the 21st century. How do you see this affecting the town of Liberty Grove?
Okay, I guess when I think of water, being a boater, I think of different type of water than some of you may be thinking of. My well hasn't run dry. It's deep enough, so that's not an issue, and I got good water. Door County has good water. But the lake level in Green Bay and even on the Michigan side has gotten to the point where, being on the Parks and Property Committee, I'm trying to deal with the fact that I have to close all these launch ramps. And that is taking dollars away from the town. It's also creating, as some of you in the audience can attest to, invasive species coming in and really creating havoc with our shorelines. And that, again, involves another cost for the town. So I guess if the issue of water came up as far as a town board meeting, as far as our local drinking water, I would probably think that that would go probably to Door County and Sturgeon Bay. But I think in terms of Green Bay and Lake Michigan, there are things that we can do and people we can write to and contact to try and resolve some of the issues involved with that, like we did with the fishermen up on Gills Rock. And I would pursue whatever course of action I thought was necessary along with the board to try and rectify those situations.
Mr. Mulliken.
Thanks. Water, that's something they do know a little bit about. In the past 12 years, I've chaired the Soil and Water Department in Sturgeon Bay, and their prime purpose is to keep our water clean in our community. Now, perhaps a lot of it's focused towards Southern Door and the large dairy farms down there, but it's very applicable to the town of Liberty Grove. In addition, I've been president of the Lake Michigan Land and Water Conservation Society for the past 12 years, and have also been active in the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association, which is a statewide organization primarily focusing on clean water. I've been president of that, operation, I think, for 2 years. So water, I do know a lot about, and I'm very cognizant of keeping water clean. It's primarily the primary thing we need to do here to make a good living in Liberty Grove. Without good water, none of us could live here. Kind of as a side issue, the lake level in Green Bay is the same as Lake Michigan, the same in Chicago, same Milwaukee, and I'm very aware that we have lower lake levels. Fortunately, with the cold weather we've had and the amount of snow, we'll have some increase in our lake levels. But I do know about groundwater, so if elected, I would have a foot in the door on that subject. Thanks.
Mr. Covotsos.
And like Gary said, this is an issue that either could be issue access to water, meaning from a recreational point of view, from the fishing point of view, as a commercial enterprise, or the idea of clean water. I know the one thing that I know the town had been involved with that involved at least the clean water was the voluntary well testing that had gone on that I thought was very forward-looking on the part of the town. Every landowner who wanted to could have their well tested to see if and when any type of pollution was evident compared to what they had done. And this at least provided a benchmark so that you kind of knew from then on, when subsequent well testing would be done, that you might be facing a problem. What the town can do independently of the county or the state in environmental protection insofar as pure water is difficult, other than perhaps, like I said, doing that voluntary well testing. There certainly should be more that I think I could learn in terms of what the town can do. But other than that well testing, I'm not too familiar with what. Now, insofar as access to water, though, if that's what the question was getting at, I think the town with the largest coastline anywhere in the country in terms of towns has a responsibility to provide access to what we have as one of our great natural resources, and that's obviously the bay and the lake. We all went out, our hearts went out to the commercial fishing ventures who were not able to get DNR to plant the Chinook salmon, and that resulted in, I think, a positive thing. And we all realized how interconnected we were with the water. Time is up.
The next question from the public, we start with Mr. Mulliken. As a town board member, how would you ensure that good accounting practices are maintained and that the public has access to the town's financial records?
How would you ensure good accounting practices and, I guess, open books is basically what the question asks for. One thing I'd like to see even if I'm not elected, it's a policy the county follows right now, is that the supervisor's packet, as you will, for each meeting is broadcast on the web at the county level. And I'd like to see that practice continued over to the town level so that people come here and they can see exactly what everyone's going to be talking about, and they have the numbers put forth prior to the meeting. At the town, you have an opportunity usually to talk on a subject, but often the vital numbers and issues that are connected with the subject are only available, at least at that point in time, to the town board members. So I guess to ensure a good, accurate thing, I think they do have an audit every year. That's important to have. And it's pretty difficult to cheat, I think, on a kind of a town board level or even a county level. But I think an audit every year is important, and I think an open access to the books is very, very important. So that's it. Thank you.
Great.
You know, the town's been struggling with an outdated accounting system. They had two different systems going, which is a reflection just simply of the fact that at that point in time when those accounting systems were purchased years ago, they didn't get the top-of-the-line bells and whistles kind of accounting system because the town didn't want to have to pay for it. It was that simple. Since the first voluntary auditing, that municipal auditing that the town had requested last year for the year 2012 by Schenken Associates, the recommendation by the auditor was to get an accrual system, accounting system that had more of the bells and whistles. In other words, something that can respond and report a lot more easily than what had been available in the past. That, to me, both the auditing, the request on the town's part for an audit and one continuing, and you said that's a good idea, and it is, and to enhance the system of the accounting system that allows for easier reporting and therefore more access to answer questions. I have not seen, in my experience, any questions go unanswered. It's difficult to get at the materials because of the archaic accounting system, but there's always been a very heartfelt attempt and a very legitimate attempt to provide access to the information that a townsperson would be looking for. Again, it's not easy to come up with reports. There are two people in that staff, in that office, compared to other municipalities that have much larger staffs for a much smaller village or municipality. The two people who work in there do, I think, their utmost to get is exactly what everybody needs under the limits that they do have.
Great. Mr. Farber.
One of the things that I've found since I was appointed to this office was that how little I, as a citizen, knew about the budgetary process in the town of Liberty Grove. And it's amazing how little I know now about that process. Most of the decisions on the budget are made by the Finance Committee. I do not belong, I'm not on the Finance Committee. But I have learned more by attending the Finance Committee meetings than I have sitting up here when something's on the agenda for a Wednesday meeting. That's where all the nitty-gritty takes place. That's where all the dimes and pennies and quarters are accounted for. And I'm finding that there is so much that goes into the putting together. It's inconceivable to me to have a $2 million budget. I mean, I don't have that kind of money. So when I sit down and I look at the budget for the town board and find that there are a slew of things that are all interconnected, and then I have to take and say, well, we can't afford that, and we can't afford that, we can't afford that. We've got to put money into this. I take a look at it and I just shake my head, because when you start trying to cut things out of our budget, even though it's $2 million, it's virtually impossible. And you get nickeled and dimed to death trying to come up with $100,000. And so one of the things that I'll continue to strive to do is to become more knowledgeable about the budgetary process in the town. And that's the only way I can be accountable for that budget for you.
Great. Next question from the public. We'll start with Mr. Covotsos. Do you support the establishment of a fire district in Northern Door, which includes Liberty Grove? If so, who would be the greatest beneficiary of such an alliance?
Yeah, I very much support the establishment of a fire district in Northern Door. I've been on the Joint Exploratory Committee since June of 2012 and have been honored to work with a group of firefighters and other town representatives in trying to put a fire district together. In terms of, I could go on for about an hour on this one, but the beneficiaries, I'm going to benefit from it. Gary's going to benefit from it. Hugh's going to benefit from it. And every individual in this room who lives in Northern Door, if the fire district were to come into fruition, would benefit from it. There's no question in my mind or anyone else's mind. The fact now that there are no guaranteed responses to a fire or to a medical emergency. As much as we'd like to think there are no guaranteed responses. Will the establishment of a fire district guarantee a response? No, not. But it will at least make it more of a response, more. If there are 3 chiefs 24/7 as opposed to just 1 chief for the fire district that we're in now, and Liberty Grove isn't a fire district. Sister Bay, Liberty Grove basically is a fire district. It's a small one, but it doesn't include the other potential towns like the village of Ephraim and the town of Egg Harbor and the village of Egg Harbor and Bailey's Harbor is not interested in participating. There at least can be much more of a response, not a guaranteed, but more of a response on the one hand. And secondly, when we do have the wonderful volunteers that do show up, and it might be that 30 people show up at a fire, when in fact you only maybe need 5, there'll be much more of a targeted response. That saves people money because you don't have to pay 30 volunteers as gallant as they might be. Time is up.
Great. Mr. Farber.
I guess as a board member, I would have to defer to the people that are more knowledgeable about the fire district and the creation of the fire district, and in this case, it's Lou. Do I support it? Yes. From what he has said at the town board meetings and the reports that we've gotten on the work that's going on creating the fire district, right now, unless something really horrendous came up, I would be in full support of a fire district in the town of Liberty Grove being in that fire district, simply because of the type of responses that he says we'll have. Those of you that were around when the Pioneer store fell down and they had that huge fire over in the condominium complex, 42 was blocked for, I think, 3 or 4 days. There were fire trucks and fire personnel and rescue personnel from all over Door County. And it looked like it was a real coordinated effort, but I don't know. And I guess maybe that's something we'll find out by the creation of a fire district. I do know that they were able to respond quickly and that they got everything taken care of. And, you know, it was an overwhelming job, but they did an excellent job of it. So we've got to give credit to the people that we have now here, as well as all of those that help us.
Mr. Mulliken.
Sure. My answer's going to be pretty short. I think it's a great idea. I think it'll make better services and cost less money.
Great. Next question from the public, we're going to start with Mr. Farber. Do you support development of the Highway 42 corridor north of Sister Bay to include expansion of sewer and water capability? Do you see such an expansion to benefit the current residents and taxpayers of Liberty Grove?
I do know that there is already a plan in place to run sewer and water from Sister Bay all the way up to Gills Rock. Whether or not it'll ever take place, I don't know. The pumping stations are on the maps, you know, where all the piping is gonna go is there, but the cost is horrendous. And the cost for individual homeowners will be very expensive. Any of you that have had your holding tank replaced in the last 5 years know exactly what I'm talking about. Would it benefit Northern Door? I don't know. I'd have to take a much closer look at that because the pros and cons for that. I came from Waukesha County. It was the fastest growing county in the state of Wisconsin. And what made it grow was that every time a farmer sold his farm, they ran sewer and water to his field. And all of a sudden, you've got 100 houses coming up in a farmer's field. So one of the things that I know nobody wants to see up here is they don't want to see a whole bunch of houses or condominiums or apartment complexes on the both sides of 42 where maybe there was an orchard 5 years ago. And I think that might be one of the things that might happen. As people have land available to them up north like they did. Maine was fine until they started putting in sewer and water up north. And then all of a sudden, you've got everybody from New York, New Jersey, and Boston buying and building a house.
Thank you. Mr. Mulliken.
You know, we're talking about the extension of sewer and water. Although it's nice to extend it, I'm not sure it's economically feasible to do something like that. You know, you have to weigh the benefits of the program to the cost of the program. And I know that I've had my septic system inspected. My father has a house up here in Liberty Grove. He's replaced his septic system. I think that probably getting the old-fashioned ones up and working well is probably a lot more cost-effective. And I would somewhat agree with Gary that you put sewer and water in, it invites rapid development of the property. So that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Covotsos.
And I know this question came up at last year's forum. I remember because that was the first time I'd ever heard of that being an issue. And I'm not going to pretend that I know enough about it to spout off about it right now. I imagine, as Gary and you already suggest, it's a complex issue. Of course it's a complex issue. And for me to spout off in 2 minutes about whether I would consider development along that way without really knowing enough would be irresponsible on my part. So I will defer to the time when I need to really study the issue should it come up. I don't see it coming up in the near future, not with where we are financially and otherwise, but at the same time, when it comes up, like everything else, I'll do my homework.
Great. Next question, we start with Mr. Mulliken. If elected, what would you like to see done differently on the town board?
It's kind of a loaded question.
That's what the card said.
Yeah. I think that, you know, I'd like to have the town board more open. I would certainly like to have that. But I think that I'd like to return again to the finances. I think it's extremely important that the town of Liberty Grove changes the direction that it's going. I cannot fathom continuing to support the ongoing expense of the town with debt. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. And so we're going to have to make some hard decisions. And I understand they're hard decisions, but We just have to make them, we have to corral in the financial issues that we're working with now. I think that would be the main issue I'd like to work with if I was elected to the town board.
Great. Mr. Covotsos.
Well, I don't want to sound like an incumbent, if you will, but at the same time I am. And like I mentioned in my opening remarks, I've had tremendous respect for the town board and the staff over the past year. More than that, but especially over the past year. Saying I wouldn't want to change anything doesn't sound very progressive, and that doesn't sound right either. There are always ways to improve, always ways to improve. But what I've seen is a trajectory, if you want to use finance as an example, the audit that the town requested, the new accrual accounting system that the town has invested in. The fact that now, for the first time, we have a capital expense fund and a contingency fund. Those two things were the envy of every municipality. We were not the envy of any municipality. Everybody else had them except for Liberty Grove. We now have a capital expense fund and a contingency fund. Those are going in the right direction. That's what I would like to have seen. And in terms of transparency, I think I would consider transparency in government a hallmark of what good government's about. It's difficult sometimes to be transparent when the town sometimes is accused of all sorts of underhanded activities that are completely unjustified. It's easy to take pot shots, in other words, at the town to suggest that this and this is really a sinister plot on the part of the town when there's absolutely nothing like that at all. There's accountability that way, and the fact that anytime anybody's asked a question, there's an answer.
Great. Mr. Farber.
I guess one of the things I made in my opening comments last April was that it would be one of my goals to try and get as much information to the public as possible so that they could take and vote intelligently on an issue that came up to the town board. I guess one of the things that I'd like to see continue on is that the board try and, through some type of media, communicate with all of Liberty Grove about the things that are going on as far as what's on our agenda. I don't know what type of media we could use. I mean, there's so many things going on now with social media and computers and stuff like that, but I'm sure that there's some way we could enhance what is put out in the public, even if it's through the local newspapers. I guess the other thing that I would like to see done, and I just lost my train of thought, so I'll bring it up later.
Okay. Next question, we start with Mr. Covotsos. Do you think any changes need to occur in the process by which the town purchases equipment and supplies? For example, should there be the dollar amount that requires public notice and a bidding process?
The town does follow a procedure in terms of its purchasing. I know that's not necessarily what's commonly believed, but they do. There isn't anything that's spent that's not reviewed by first a committee, whether it's Parks and Property, and we looked into lawnmowers and things, or it's the town board itself that passes on the purchase. We did, the boardwalks for the park reclamation that we're doing at Holtz and the other park, whose name is Europe, that went out to bid to an excruciating degree. Everything was looked at. Everything came back. The Parks and Property Committee looked at it again. So the purchases, the tanker truck that the fire department went all through the bidding process, Liberty Grove being 2/3 of the fire department expenses, went through, again, bidding process, sealed bids, opened the bids, and so forth and so on. And so in that sense, from big things to little things, there's a lot of control. At the same time, though, there's also some deference given to the people who work those machines, who need to do those things on a regular basis. You know, it's very easy from outside the ivory tower to make comments about how this should be done and that should be done. And those people who are in the trenches, making the decisions and doing the daily work, sometimes need to have a little deference to what they need, how they need it, and when they need it. And far be it from somebody who's not in the trenches all the time to call the shots on every little detail. And that goes back to the idea of trust.
Great. Mr. Farber.
The item that I lost track of before is something that is actually an answer to this question. The town right now is developing a 5-year rolling plan in all of the different areas that affect the budget. Parks and Property is doing a 5-year plan, Highway Committee is doing a 5-year plan. And all of those plans involve purchases and expenses that are going to occur over the next 5 years. And I guess the thing that we're having a real problem wrestling with right now, and it came up with the Highway Committee, it's come up with the Marina through Parks and Property, is that there are not enough funds to even address the issues that are on the 5-year plans. The last time any money was actually put into the Ellison Bay Marina was 2008, and that was taken out the summer of 2009 and put someplace else. Those of you that were here for the budget meeting and the Highway Committee meetings realize that because of budget restraints, 5 roads that were supposed to have been fixed this year will now be put off till 2018. And those are the type of changes that I would like to see eliminated as far as purchasing. I mean, if we're gonna fix a road this year, then we budget to fix a road this year. And we don't put it off for 5 more years and spend twice as much in 5 years fixing that same road. So we've got to take a much closer look at these 5-year plans in terms of purchasing and spending funds.
Great. Mr. Mulliken.
The question was, I believe, at least the way I wrote it down, was, should we have a process to purchase supplies? I think that probably you could sort of segregate this out, but you should set a limit to what people can do with or without the town board approval. And so it's pretty clear that a simple solution would be to just put some floor as to what the minimum amount should be or maximum amount you could spend without some sort of a town board approval. So if a policy was put in place like that with a monetary amount assigned to it, I think it'd be a good idea. Thank you.
Great. Next question will begin with Mr. Farber. Do you support leaving the Door Bluff Headlands Park in its present natural, undeveloped state without camping facilities or trails of any kind? And would you actively work to maintain this as policy?
We just had a meeting with the Door County Parks group up here, and they brought in the specialists that they're working with, and the main concern right now up there is the emerald ash borer. And for me to second guess, well, for one thing, it's a county park. It's not a Liberty Grove park. The decision to do anything with that park is going to come out of Sturgeon Bay. I think they were very gracious to come up here and share what they were getting with us and allow us, so we didn't have to drive all the way to Sturgeon Bay to hear it. If there are going to be trails there, be it horse trails, walking trails, that's their decision. What they do with the trees is their decision. And they have the experts that are going to give them the information. Now, hopefully that information is accurate and up to date. But there are some things that we, as a town board, we have input in it, but we have no control over it. So, do I support what's going on up there? I have some reservations about what's going on there, but then again, it's not my decision. And all I could do was take and go to a meeting and express my concern, but it's not a town park. If it was, then Parks and Property could do something about it. But right now, I don't think we can.
Mr. Mulliken.
It's, I guess if I could just pull my card out of the pocket, I'd say leave the park alone. Frankly, I don't think that cutting down the ash trees is a big gain for anybody at this point in time. The county board will, of course, the elections are coming up. The county board will reorganize on April 15th. At that point in time, the Airports and Parks Committee will have a new group of people. And I would find it very easy to go to that, folks, and say, it's our park, leave it alone.
Mr. Covotsos.
Yeah, I regret missing the 17th meeting, which I understand was very well attended and very well presented. It's a difficult thing. I mean, to be able to say that we wouldn't want the trees to be diseased is nice, but if that's a fact of life, you know, like a lot of other things, we just have to deal with it. The fact that the town could weigh in but not have final say, as Gary suggested, I think is controlling here. It is a county park. It goes to a bigger question, I think, though. What does Liberty Grove want to be? I mean, we are not Sister Bay. We are not going to be Fish Creek downtown. We want the things that we look at every day here, whether it's the natural beauty, the escarpment, and the other things like that, to be preserved as much as possible. At the same time, though, if you stagnate and not grow, you will die as a community. So how you balance developing, so to speak, on the one hand, and preserving on the other hand is crucial. We're going to live through this all through our lives because we chose to live in a place that has that kind of balance. That we say, you know what, the natural beauty of Door Headlands, even though it's not a town park, is something that should be preserved, but there might be need for a trail because that would allow people to enjoy it. How you balance those things is the important part, not a specific decision about the emerald ash borer and the ash trees program right now, or a trail in that park is on the other hand.
The next question from the public, we start with Mr. Mulliken. Would you actively work to immediately reactivate, implement, and promote the approved Heritage Roads policy and its separate road maintenance guidelines? Would you apply the program to roads under consideration for improvement as a means of preserving and protecting their unique qualities?
Wow, almost took 2 minutes to read the question.
Yeah.
As I understand it, the Heritage Road Program is a local program that's put on by the town of Liberty Grove. It's not a state program. I do know that safe roads are important, and the state has come up and dictated minimum road standards. I believe it's, the statute is 82.50, and it dictates with the volume of traffic on the road, the amount of pavement that goes on the road, the amount of shoulders that go on the road, the maximum grade that can go on a road. That doesn't mean a road has to be ugly by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the town should build roads that meet the minimum, and I think the minimum is what we're after here, road requirements of the state, and not go further than that. They don't need to clear back another 10 feet from each side of the road simply because it makes it easier for the snowplow driver. I think that I enjoy, sometimes when I drive to Gills Rock, often to go to the ferry or go to the Shoreline Restaurant or something like that, and I'll often go up like Garrett Bay Road and wind around through the backcountry to get up to Gills Rock. I find that a very enjoyable drive. And to have a superhighway going up there is not what I'd like to see. So I think we just build our roads to meet the minimum standards that the state dictates upon town roads, and let it be at that, and then the trees can grow happily alongside the road. Thank you.
Yeah, just to be completely candid about the Heritage Roads program, I think it's just about the most wonderful thing that the town could come up with insofar as being able to promote itself, its natural heritage and stuff. However, the Heritage Roads program, that benefit was the result of a plan to keep the trees off of Isle Road and Garrett Bay Road from being cut down. That's as simple as that. It has to do with how close the trees were to the roadway on Isle Road and Garrett Bay Road. This issue has become so complex as a result of a very simple scheme to keep the trees close to the road, have become so complex with what constitutes the proper road maintenance, how far back do we need to go, and it has been the bone of contention in this town for years. We got to scale it back and start back again as to exactly what the program intended to do, what it can do for us to promote the fact that people should come and see our roads as beautiful as they are, the 8 roads that are there as being designated, and more to come. But getting it all mixed up with how wide the road should be, how much the clear zone should be, getting people from the highway department up here answering questions has complicated everything tremendously. I think we do need to go back, because I think the town and the other proponents of heritage roads are talking cross each other. And someone saying a heritage road means you cannot do anything to that road except leave it the way it is. And the town is saying, you know what? It's not practical to leave it exactly the way it is. We have to do some maintenance. We have to push back the clear zone a little bit. Time's up.
Mr. Farber.
I'm more or less on the same page as Lou is on that. I was not involved in the Isleview Road project, but I was heavily involved in the Garrett Bay Road project, as most of you know. If we had done what the statute said should be done as far as Garrett Bay Road, it would look like Highway 42. We went into that road, I don't even remember how many times. And every time we went into that road, there was another tree closer to the road, and people were still not happy that we had cut the tree behind it. They did not want the dead trees cut down. They did not want the trees that were laying on the power lines cut down. And it, like Lou said, it became a tree issue, not a road issue. So I think I am in favor of going back and looking at that program and really fine-tuning it so that in the future we don't have this big bone of contention in terms of items that were on the Garrett Bay Road proposal.
For the next question, we start with Mr. Covotsos. What is your priority when economic growth and development could have a significant impact on natural resources and the community?
That's kind of what I was saying before in terms of how we balance. That was where I brought it up with the idea of the sewers and the sewer and water lines bringing development. If we stagnate as a town by not doing some development in a controlled way, which is what all planning and zoning has to do with, and my 1.5 years on the Plan Commission has been eye-opening in terms of the care and concern that the town, through the Plan Commission, uses in terms of making sure that development is done in a logical, consistent way with the values of what we have. And so, on the one hand, like I said earlier, we want to preserve. We want to be able to live in the town in the area of called Liberty Grove and Northern Door that looks the way it looks. But at the same time, if the roads crumble, if houses look dilapidated, and we look like the equivalent of Detroit as a small town, nobody's going to want to come here. Nobody's going to want to invest in property, and everybody's property taxes and everybody's value of quality of life will go down. It's that question. It's just a question of saying, but how do I balance not making this a superhighway and sister bay with condos, one on top of another, and yet preserve what we have? We're going to, if we stagnate and refuse to do anything and just say no to every purchase, every road construction, and everything else, we will stagnate. And the quality of life. A couple of years ago at a town meeting, Thorson said, look at downtown Ellison Bay. It looks worse now than it did 2 years ago. And this was a couple of years ago. And you look at the dilapidated houses, some of them down there, and think, you know what? Maybe we are living in something of a brown area or a blighted area. Time is up.
Mr. Farber.
My wife has a business. She has a gallery in Ellison Bay. And I've been involved with the Business Roundtable. I've gone to the Economic Development Committee meetings. There's a lot of talk about developing downtown Ellison Bay. And I guess it harkens back to what I said about Liberty Grove. We can't throw all of our money into one little venture, but we have to do something in terms of revitalizing Liberty Grove. And things like a business incubator or the community kitchen or bringing in small business is all well and good. But one of the things that I'm finding out, and I don't know why I didn't realize this before, all of these things that Door County North and NDNA and other people want cost money. And if you're going to do something, or if you want something done, then somebody has to pay for that. And that somebody is the town of Liberty Grove. Whether we increase the levy or we borrow, you and I still have to pay for it. And if you keep your old tax records, property tax records, you want an eye-opener, go back to 2008 and look at what you paid for property taxes, and then take out this year's property tax bill. And then look at the value of your house. I'm appalled at how little I spend on property taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Mulliken.
You know, change is going to happen whether you like it or not, and I think the direction change takes is a direct result of how the zoning is on a particular piece of property or within the township itself. So I think if you want to promote growth and promote change, the zoning of a piece of property or a parcel of property is very important. I think that directs the thing. If I come to the town board, I've served on the Resource Planning Committee, which is the zoning arm of Door County, for the past 12 years. And I have a very good idea of thinking about how zoning works, and the direction it takes. And I don't have enough time in 2 minutes to explain a few things, but I think zoning and the basic economics of what's happening will dictate to a large respect or to a large amount the direction that Door County takes and Liberty Grove in particular takes. Thank you.
Next question from the public. We start with Mr. Farber. Under what circumstances would you advise or require town committee or board members to recuse themselves during deliberations or voting?
Did you read that again, please?
Yes. Under what circumstances would you advise or require town committee or board members to recuse themselves during deliberations or voting.
Again, this, I think, goes back to what's happened in the last couple of years as far as activities in the town of Liberty Grove. We have a very small staff, but we have a highly educated staff in terms of how the town of Liberty Grove operates and functions. We don't bring in outside consultants to look at a road or do something. We rely on our own staff. Now, for some reason, through this whole road fiasco, some of our staff have been accused of a variety of things, all of which, from what I can determine, they've been falsely accused. And to advise a board member or a committee member to not vote on a particular issue would be probably a topic for discussion. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a moral issue, and they have to make that decision. And I would probably approach it that way. But to ignore the resources that we have, I think is not very cost-effective and very foolhardy.
Mr. Mulliken.
Sure. Yeah, I have looked at the number of committees the town of Liberty Grove has, and I think that there's probably way too many. I think they should be consolidated down. I think the committee head should be an elected official, a town board member. I don't think they should, as an example, Mr. Walker, who I like very much, just resigned as the highway chairman. I think that the chairman of all the committees should be an elected official, and I don't feel that people who work for the town should be on the committee. That's not saying you would ignore their advice they provide, but I think that the people who serve or work for this township should not be a voting member of the committees.
Yeah, I echo what Gary said in the sense that it's a small town. We have limited resources. We draw on those resources, including the staff and the work crew on some instances. So when is there a conflict of interest then? A conflict of interest occurs when a person is going to gain from a decision that would ordinarily be unbiased. So the answer to the question is, when should they recuse themselves? They should recuse themselves, whether they're a town board member or a staff member on a committee, when they are going to directly benefit in some way from a decision that should be made completely independently of their own personal interests. The fact that for the Parks and Property Committee, for example, Jay Olson is a town employee and he's on the Parks and Property Committee. As few times as we voted, we don't vote very much, we usually come to a consensus on the committee. As few times as he's voted, he has been an invaluable resource insofar as being able to provide insight into what the town needs and can do. The fact that a committee would vote one way or the other, as important as committees are, and they are very important to the functioning of the town, as important as the committees are, the ultimate decisions go back to the town board. The town board is the one that makes the decisions with the advice and consent of the committee. So if somebody in a committee, if a committee is not voting the way certain voters would like them to vote, it doesn't mean that's the end of the road. It means that there is an option for the town board to listen to everything, which is what the town board does. The town board is not a rubber stamp of what the committees do. They do independent work and education.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Mr. Mulliken. The town website is not currently an official posting site for the board meeting agendas. Why not?
I have absolutely no idea why not. Should be.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Crank it through these. Mr. Farber?
Yeah.
Okay, we're all in agreement there.
The website, although I'll have to add that we are currently, as the town board, working on improving that website to make information more accessible to the public. That work has already been started, and it's a slow process. Any of you that are involved in social media, my wife still doesn't know how to turn on a computer, so I do all of her emails. So it can be a very time-consuming and a very steep learning curve to do any type of things like that. And you can't just walk in and sit down at a keyboard and develop a website. So we are in the process of working on that particular issue, and hopefully it'll be done soon. So keep asking.
Great. This is going to be the last question. Then I have a few announcements, and we'll do the closing statements. So the last question, starting with Mr. Covotsos. What are your suggestions as to how residents of Liberty Grove can most enjoy life and thrive in Liberty Grove? Isn't that a great way to end?
Might enjoy life and
thrive.
thrive. I got to figure that out myself first before I give advice to everybody else. I think one of the ways that we can enjoy life is to be less contentious about things and be more civil about things. That sounds ironic, but in fact, we are never any close to being as civil as we should be. Much too contentious, and both sides, if you will blame the other for being that way, and that's an unfair characterization of what it is. We're not talking well enough. I think what we need to do is communicate better and enjoy by realizing that we do live in a place that has both a great community of people as well as some physical beauty. And sometimes we lose that in all this contentiousness. We lose track of the fact that we should be enjoying it rather than fighting as much about it. I think volunteering, by the way, volunteering in every way, shape, or form is a great way to get connected to whether it's shelving in the library or working at Scanned or at the Northern Door Children's Center. There are an incredible, at the clearing, you name it, there are a million opportunities, and that is where the enjoyment of life comes out. We live in a place where there are tons of opportunities to volunteer in constructive ways, and that volunteering and connection is what brings pleasure and fulfillment to somebody's life.
Thank you. Mr. Farber.
I guess one of the things that really keeps me going in the town of Liberty Grove is the fact that I've got so many caring neighbors and that there is more stuff to do than I can possibly get done in my lifetime. And I mentioned the Historical Society. I got involved in that, and there are downsides to volunteering, trust me. So, but that is another, I don't know of anybody that I'm close to that does not volunteer in some activity while they're here, even the snowbirds. The first thing they do when they get here in May, they head for the clearing. They head for Birch Creek. They head for Peninsula Players. And those same people are not just sunning themselves on the beach down in Florida or in Arizona. They're also volunteering there. And it keeps them young and healthy. I have an 87-year-old friend, a female, and they live up on Cedar Dell. Some of you may know them. She finally stopped driving her fifth wheel to Florida every year and back. Finally. And we all thank God for that. So I guess get out, be active, take advantage of what we have, because we have so much here in the town of Liberty Grove.
Great. Mr. Mulliken.
Thanks. That's a kind of a great question, and kind of an uplifting question. I first started coming up to Door County, my grandparents came up to Door County in the early 1900s, but I started coming up here in the early 60s. In the early 60s, about the only thing you had to do was go to the AC tap and play pool or beanbag. Things have changed a lot, and as both these people have alluded to, I mean, there's a tremendous growth, and I think that you just have to get out and enjoy some of the stuff you have up here. Take advantage of it. You know, you often go to a town and like go to a big city or something, and you ask the people who live there, when's the last time you went to a museum? They say, well, I'm too busy. Well, don't get too busy to not enjoy the stuff that Liberty Grove has to offer right now. There's a tremendous amount of stuff that we have to offer. And I'm somewhat guilty of that. I haven't had my boat in the water for 2 years because I've been doing other stuff. And this year I'm going to promise to put my boat in the water and go fishing.
Great. So that was the last of the questions we had time for. There were many questions from the public. We thank you so much for contributing those questions to make this forum a success. A couple of announcements before the closing statements. There are some tables in the back with information regarding the League of Women Voters of Door County. Please consider joining us. The candidates also have an opportunity to place literature on a table in the back as well. We're hopeful that this morning has been helpful to you as a voter, and trust that you're better informed to vote intelligently, and again, based on the intelligent questions. That's a great sign, too. Don't forget to vote on Tuesday, April 1st. There are 2 seats open for the Town of Liberty Grove Board. It is your right in our democracy to cast 2 votes for the candidates of your personal choice. So go to the polls, exercise your right to vote, take a friend, take a young person. Your vote does count. And we invite you to stay and visit with the candidates and have some refreshments that were so generously provided by a community group. So then for the closing statements, we start with Mr. Farber. Each candidate has 5 minutes if they wish to take that much time.
I guess, as I've mentioned a couple times, I have probably 3 main goals in terms of what I want to do as a town board member. I want to take and make the budget work, and unfortunately, that probably will not be a very pleasant experience for me. I want to make sure that you, as the electorate, have as much information available to yourself as possible, so you can, if not vote on a particular issue, at least contact me as a town board member and say, this is the way I want you to vote. And I will take that concern into mind when I do cast my vote. I guess once I take and get that information to you, the other thing I want to encourage, and somehow we've been pretty lucky the last 3 meetings, and I think it's probably because of all the controversy, is to fill up this hall every time we have a meeting and not sit up here and thinking to myself, why are there only 4 people here? And there's some reason why people aren't coming to the meetings. And there's a 4th issue I think I need to address. As I mentioned before, I learned a lot more about the budget process by going to the Finance Committee meeting. I'm not on the Finance Committee. I'm on Parks and Property and Highway. There are 4 people at the town board meeting. There are no people at the committee meetings. There are just the committee members. And the decisions the committee members are making and referring to the town board are based on their discussion here. There's no input there. There's been a lot of input recently on the highway committee, but it definitely is not a majority view, and it does not represent the town of Liberty Grove. And I think we have to take that into account. And so the more people I can get to the committee meetings, and maybe changing the time of a committee meeting. You know, you can't come to an 8 o'clock highway committee meeting because you got water walkers at the pool. And that's more important. And so maybe a 7 o'clock meeting at night every other month would be more appropriate. We'd have to make sure it's not during the football game. So, but those are the types of things that I think I need to concentrate on if elected to this office. And again, you know, with your input and your help, I think I can be a very successful town supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Farber. Mr. Mulliken.
Thank you. Well, I can tell you one thing we all three have in common. We're all bald. You know, one thing I have that I can bring that neither one of the other people have is I have a lot of experience in county and town government. As I mentioned before, I was on the town board for 2 complete terms before. And while I was on the county, I'd like to just quick read a little list of the committees I've served on. I served on the ad hoc building committee for the jail, the ad hoc building committee for the remodeling of the government center. I served on the airports and parks committee, the property committee, museum and archives committee, community programs, highway, resource planning, that's the planning and zoning, land conservation, that's the clean water, law enforcement, human services, and lastly, I served on the ad hoc committee for the county fair. I bring a lot of experience, and I think that experience I can use well on the county or town board. When I first came on the town in 1994, or town board in 1994, 1996, Liberty Grove has experienced a great amount of growth. The property values or the assessed evaluation was going up probably 10, 12% per year. That provided an easy budget and a very, there was no really restrictions on how much money you could spend. It just kind of kept flowing in. Today, it's completely different. We have levy limits, and levy limits do not reduce the amount of dollars available. It just limits the amount of dollars available. So you have to figure out how to spend your money more wisely. And I think I can bring to the committee or to the town board some objective outlooks that are really important. I think that I made a little list of stuff that I think were not really too important to do recently. And about a year ago, the town bought a new Bobcat. It only had about 1,000 hours on the existing Bobcat. Bobcats can go 10, 15,000 hours. They bought a new backhoe. I've been verbal about that. $80,000 the backhoe cost if you include the trade-ins. The purpose of the backhoe was to open and close graves. Well, Bailey's Harbor and Gibraltar both subcontract that work. They've recently undertook a study of a community kitchen. Well, that's great. We may need a community kitchen, but the fact of the matter is they cost a lot of money, and there's no sense in looking at one if you can't afford one. They bought a traffic and speed counter. Well, the county can provide that. And they talked about the other day about what kind of wood to use in the beach walk. You know, people have been using pressure-treated wood for a long time, and I doubt if any one of them went and looked at the walks that have been put in already. They've had a lawsuit with the county board, or the county. They sued the county. Not only did they pay their own legal fees, but Liberty Grove pays 17% of the county budget, so they paid 70% of the defense, or 17% of the defense. These are little issues that maybe only $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and I understand it's a lot of money, but you add them all up and it's real change in your pocket. You just have to be more careful where you spend your money. I've asked Bud to bring to me cost on the maintenance of the roads. I've asked other townships to do the same thing. It's a little more difficult in Liberty Grove because they do it all themselves. But the initial findings are that the way our do our roads are not a real bargain is often suspended, but I think we'll just have to look at that later. So anyway, I think in just summary, I kind of like to see that the packets for the supervisors become online so that everyone can see exactly what we're talking about prior to the meetings. I think it's a big advantage to be well informed. And I'd like to close with one thing. I think that we need to look at the budget, and what I'd like to suggest is there's $40,000 in the budget for supervisor salary. I think we ought to just cut that down to about $1 a month for every supervisor until we can unload the debt limit, or the debt that we're having on our thing. So if elected, I will bring my salary down to $1 a month, and I hope that the other supervisors will do the same in good spirit of saving money and preventing using debt to finance the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulliken. Mr. Covotsos.
Can I impose on you to give me a minute each time? Could you tick down a minute and then each minute just hold up to stop? Yes, please. So I just kind of know where I stand?
I'll turn it this way.
That's fine. I'll get it either way. Thanks. I can't compete with can't compete with Hugh's experience in local government. I did spend 30 years as an administrator in a law firm with 1,000 lawyers. So if you think that a couple of disgruntled citizens is a problem, deal with 1,000 lawyers over 30 years, and you'll see what a challenge that might be. In that law firm experience, though, it's not different in some ways from here as well. There would be new partners in charge who always thought they could come in and be able to express how we could spend money better and still not reduce the services that we have. And you don't want to be stuck in, thank you, you don't want to be stuck in the idea of just defending the status quo all the time. The reason I said at the beginning that I have such respect, I have greater respect even in the past year being on the board, both with my fellow town board members on the one hand and with the town staff on the other hand, is because of the very great deliberation that every one of these purchases that you suggested made were given. They were not done cavalierly. They were not done with an eye toward just spending the taxpayers' money. They were agonized over from a financial point of view, from a practical point of view, as to what the best way of getting the best bang for the buck would be. And, you know, we can debate the lawsuit, for example. If that came up again, I think, thank you. I think there's no question in my mind that I would support that lawsuit regardless of the fact that it did involve some expense. And that was very carefully debated as well. No question about that. And debt, the idea of debt. Everybody's mentioned the caps. Since 2005, the state legislature has imposed caps on municipal spending. We live with that. At the time those caps were imposed, the town of Liberty Grove was in a hunkered down position from a budgetary point of view. In other words, at that point in time, like the game in statues, you froze where you were. And you couldn't get any higher. We were crouched down because we were spending back in 2005, as we have since then, very little money. So you get locked in there. Well, expenses have not stopped going up. Anybody who pays for, thank you, anybody who pays for propane or gas or whatever knows that your expenses have gone up. What family doesn't have some debt anyway? In order to get through, not for roads and not for operating expenses, but for capital purchases, there has to have been and will continue to be borrowing, but in a very wise way. We, as the town, can borrow up to $100 million. That's our limit as to what we can borrow from as a municipality. We have borrowed a small fraction of that, barely $1.5 million. So I'm not saying you spend up to your credit limit, but our credit limit is $100 million. That's what the state has allowed us to do. What I want to finish up with, though, is what I see as a vision. And this is, I've heard from my fellow board members and others in the town, we want to be, thank you, we want to be a place where ecotourism is a foundation. That goes hand in hand with what we are and what we look like. We want to be able to emphasize our heritage. We want to be able to emphasize our arts. Those are why people would come here. Those are why people would come to stay and live. That's why people would come to stay and visit. We have a gold mine under our feet called the Niagara Escarpment. If we fritter that gold mine away, for example, by not promoting it in an eco-tourist friendly way, we have spoiled an opportunity and someone else will take advantage of it. Does that mean 1 minute left? That's
30 seconds.
30 seconds. That's the right one up. All right, then.
Much less already.
Yeah, there you. And so, in terms of a vision, Gary mentioned the 5-year plan, and I see us being this eco-tourist friendly area that has the ability to draw people to come and live.
Thank you, candidates, for being willing to run for office and serve if elected. Thanks to all of you for attending and participating in the democratic process. And let's end with a round of applause for the candidates.